Hello friends, and welcome to the Forgotten Past. On this channel, you'll explore untold stories, lost events, ancient discoveries, and hidden secrets from across history. Let's view the video. World War I was a conflict marked by brutal stalemates, immense casualties, and haunting mysteries. Among them, one of the strangest remains the vanishing of a British battalion in Gallipoli. A military unit marched into battle and was never seen again. What happened that day remains shrouded in uncertainty. The 105th Battalion of the Norfolk Regiment was a territorial force composed largely of men from King's Lynn and Sandringham. They were part of the 163rd Brigade in the 54th Division, dispatched to Gallipoli to bolster the failing Allied offensive against the Ottoman Empire. These were ordinary men drawn into an extraordinary war. The Gallipoli campaign had already turned into a nightmare. The landing at Suvla Bay in August 1915 was poorly planned and executed. British troops faced scorching heat, water shortages, and stiff Ottoman resistance. The terrain was unfamiliar, dusty ridges, gullies, and thorns, making every advance slow and dangerous for inexperienced troops. On August 12, 1915, the 105th Norfolks received orders to advance into the Kayacik Dere area. Their objective was to drive back entrenched Ottoman forces and seize strategic high ground. Despite the intense heat and poor visibility, the men pressed forward in good spirits, unaware they were walking into oblivion. The Turkish defenses were deeply entrenched and well prepared. The Ottomans had an excellent vantage point, using snipers and machine guns to repel advances. British coordination was fragmented, and several regiments advanced with limited artillery support. Chaos mounted as the terrain broke apart communication and visibility between units. British records describe confusing signals and erratic support. The Norfolks, under Colonel Beauchamp, pushed too far ahead of the main force. No one anticipated what came next. Somewhere in the valley, amid smoke and Turkish fire, the unit vanished. No clear retreat, no survivors, no graves, just silence. The story began to spread among soldiers. An entire battalion lost in fog and fire. Some said they saw a mist descend and then nothing. Others blamed poor leadership. From this day forward, the Norfolk Regiment's disappearance would haunt Gallipoli's legacy, a legend born in blood and silence. The 105th Norfolks were last seen advancing toward a line of trees and scrub known as Kayacik Dere. They entered under withering fire, scattered, and then vanished. Several Allied observers later reported they had seen the battalion walk into a dense cloud and never emerge. The battlefield fell silent. Rumors began spreading almost immediately. Some soldiers claimed the Norfolks had pushed too far and were wiped out. Others, particularly New Zealand engineers, testified they saw an unnatural, dense mist hang over the valley. According to their accounts, the battalion marched into it, then disappeared without sound or trace. Back in British command posts, confusion ruled. Communications were patchy and delayed. Officers reported the Norfolks missing in action. But unlike typical wartime disappearances, there were no wounded, no survivors, and no recovered weapons. A search turned up nothing. It was as if the battalion had been erased. What shocked many was that the Ottomans, though victorious in the region, never claimed to have captured the Norfolks. Turkish commanders denied taking prisoners from that regiment. Despite having records of every captured unit, there was no mention of the 105th Norfolks anywhere. The mystery only deepened. British media initially remained quiet, likely due to wartime censorship. But after the war, strange stories surfaced. A 1965 letter from a New Zealand veteran reignited interest. He insisted the men vanished into a hovering cloud, and the story gained renewed life among war historians and paranormal researchers alike. Speculation grew fast. Some said the battalion had been annihilated by a hidden machine gun nest and buried where they fell. Others believed their bodies were destroyed in an explosion. No physical evidence supported either theory. The lack of remains became the most chilling aspect of the event. As years passed, the disappearance became legend. Books and documentaries embraced the strange accounts. The image of soldiers marching into an unnatural mist became iconic. But For the families of the men, there was no closure, only silence, and a question that no one could answer. What happened to the Norfolks? The disappearance of the Norfolks soon invited wild speculation. Some veterans began whispering about supernatural fogs. Others spoke of an otherworldly silence before the battalion vanished. The chaos of war often breeds myth, but in this case, the absence of answers made strange explanations more believable than official military statements. Soon, more bizarre theories emerged. A fringe group suggested the battalion had been abducted by extraterrestrials, pointing to the hovering cloud seen by witnesses. The UFO community picked up the story decades later. Though implausible, the idea gained attention simply because no conventional theory filled the gaping holes in the case. Another popular belief was the use of experimental gas or chemical weapons by the Ottomans or Germans. Some argued the cloud was man-made, intended to confuse and suffocate enemy forces. However, no known gas at the time could erase an entire unit without leaving any trace of equipment or remains. Some British historians proposed a darker theory. Perhaps the Norfolks had panicked and fled, later killed or captured in smaller groups. If true, this would have been a blow to morale. Was the truth suppressed to protect the Army's image? Wartime propaganda had already buried uncomfortable truths before. The British government had firm control over wartime reporting. Failed operations, high casualties, and desertions were often omitted. The Norfolk's fate may have been classified to preserve morale. In wartime, truth becomes a weapon, and silence a form of defense. Some secrets die not with soldiers, but with state orders. Post-war memoirs conflicted on key details. Some described watching the battalion vanish into mist. Others reported hearing heavy gunfire and screams. The inconsistencies only fed new legends. Even respected war historians differed. Was it failure, foul play, or fantasy? The lack of resolution kept speculation alive for generations. Across history, other military disappearances occurred, but rarely with such complete erasure. The Norfolks became a unique case study in battlefield mystery. Their story inspired novels, documentaries, and conspiracy theories. Yet under the intrigue lies real loss, men whose fates were consumed by smoke, silence, and the needs of propaganda. Among the missing were sons, brothers, and husbands. Families back in Norfolk began writing letters to the War Office, desperate for answers. Many believed their loved ones were prisoners, but the silence was deafening. No Red Cross reports, no letters from POW camps, only official notices marked "missing in action." Surviving soldiers from nearby units offered inconsistent testimonies. Some claimed to have seen the Norfolks enter a copse of trees before. Gunfire erupted. Others insisted there had been no sounds at all. These contradictions made it harder to pinpoint what really happened. Fact and confusion merged in the fog of war. A few Turkish officers later recalled clashing with a British force in that sector, but none remembered capturing an entire battalion. They described scattered dead, not organized units. The official Ottoman records supported their claims, raising more doubts about whether the Norfolks had been annihilated together or split during chaos. Letters from soldiers before the attack described low morale, extreme thirst, and exhaustion. One wrote, "We march again tomorrow. May God watch us." These fragments, preserved by families, painted a tragic portrait of doomed men. They humanized the mystery, turning abstract speculation into real anguish and irreversible loss. The decades following the war, British and Turkish veterans occasionally met during reconciliation ceremonies. Some exchanged stories, none offered certainty. One Turkish scout described seeing a small group of English soldiers wandering, dazed and separated. He remembered their uniforms, but not their fate. Memory, too, fades with time. In the 1980s and 90s, archaeologists began combing Suvla Bay using advanced techniques. Remnants of uniforms, buttons, and insignia were unearthed. Some bore markings of the Norfolk Regiment, yet no mass grave was ever found. The physical record, though real, couldn't solve the central question: How did a battalion vanish entirely? Today, battlefield forensics help reconstruct troop movements. GIS mapping and satellite imagery overlay wartime reports. Some researchers believe the Norfolks advanced too far and were cut off, dying in pockets. But the search for certainty remains unfinished. The battalion's fate is not only a military puzzle, but a human one. After the war, the British Army conducted a series of inquiries into the fate of missing units. The Norfolk Regiment's case was unusual from the start. No solid battlefield reports explained their disappearance. War diaries from neighboring units only offered vague entries. Mentions of heavy losses and unclear status were common. The Commonwealth War Graves Commission, CWGC, listed over 250 men from the 1/5 Norfolks as missing. Their names were etched onto the Hells Memorial in Turkey, alongside thousands of others. But while most had graves or recovered remains, the Norfolks had none, fueling further suspicion that something had gone very wrong. The British official history of the Gallipoli campaign, compiled by historian Cecil Aspinall Oglander, mentioned the battalion's advance but lacked detail. He noted they pressed forward into heavy fire and suffered severe losses. His wording left room for interpretation. Was it destruction, dispersal, or deliberate omission? A breakthrough came in 1919 when Turkish forces surrendered Suvla Bay. British search parties scoured the battlefield. They discovered a small concentration of remains near a farm. Some were identified by Norfolk Regiment cap badges. However, the number of bodies found was far fewer than those listed as missing. Colonel Beauchamp's remains were reportedly identified by a monogrammed cigarette case. This lent some credibility to the theory that part of the battalion had been surrounded and killed. Yet the sparse physical evidence and scattered locations of bodies contradicted the idea of a single unified last stand. Military archives later revealed redacted pages and missing correspondence tied to the 1/5 Norfolks. War Office files referenced unverified field actions. Some letters between officers were marked sensitive. These fragments hinted that the full truth might have been concealed, possibly to mask strategic blunders or lapses in command. Modern historians remain divided. Some argue the unit was sacrificed in a diversionary tactic. Others think the chaos of terrain and poor communication led to the battalion's disintegration. The official records raise as many questions as they answer. History, when filtered through bureaucracy, often leaves its most troubling chapters incomplete. Over a century later, the mystery of the vanished Norfolks remains deeply woven into public memory. In Norfolk, memorial plaques and church services honor the fallen. Their story is passed down as both solemn history and whispered legend, heroes swallowed by war, whose fate became a symbol of enduring sacrifice and mystery. The battalion's disappearance inspired literature, films, and television dramas. Some retell it as a ghost story, others treat it as historical tragedy. Fictionalized accounts feature everything from supernatural clouds to secret weapons. The line between truth and storytelling continues to blur, making the Norfolks both myth and memory. Historians still investigate the incident, publishing new analyses and interpretations. Conferences and academic papers dissect each fragment of the case. Every new generation of researchers brings new questions, sometimes revisiting old theories with modern tools, drones, satellite imagery, and digital terrain models. Yet even now, the answers remain elusive. Local schools in Norfolk teach the story as part of WW1’s Remembrance. Students visit the Hells Memorial, reciting the names of the lost. These acts keep the battalion alive in memory. For the community, it's not just a war story. It's family history, identity, and a constant reminder of war's cost. In Turkey, too, recognition has grown. Gallipoli is now a place of shared memory between former enemies. Turkish and British officials honor the fallen together. The vanished battalion symbolizes the confusion of war, where men die not only in body, but in name and narrative, becoming ghosts of unresolved history. Online communities and amateur researchers keep the investigation alive, Forums, podcasts, and YouTube videos spread awareness of the mystery. Digital age storytelling preserves the battalion's legend, reaching millions. Despite its age, the story resonates, perhaps because it captures a universal truth. That war often leaves more questions than answers. In the end, the Norfolk's fate remains uncertain, but their legacy is not. Whether lost to gunfire, error, or myth, their story transcends explanation. It reminds us that some truths may remain hidden, but the act of remembering gives the fallen meaning. Through mystery, they have achieved a strange kind of immortality. Thanks for watching The Forgotten Past. If you enjoyed the journey, like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a hidden story or untold truth. New discoveries await. See you in the next video.